about to
It's just
start.
on here. Y'all having it
It gives you that
on
feeling
the
where
side?
you know it's about
Okay.
to start.
Yeah,
And
well,
after a while, you
we
get where you
wanted
don't
to
have
have
to
it
speed
on the side where the
You know
entrance to the
about to start.
farm,
That's what you
but you
feel.
know, they're tearing down
So it teaches you
before
that.
the
That's-
plan.
Okay.
So we've moved it to where it says health department at the front.
Like a
Okay.
roller
And that
coaster.
little grass.
So we're-
I'm okay with that. I'm like Commissioner Gibbs, and I'll watch that.
Right. Yeah.
She's gonna have a little nose.
There was another comedian used to do Billy Carter, his book.
And,
He said Billy Carter was at the airport one day. I said, "What time is that plane in Nashville?" I said,
cause I had them when it's supposed to.
"All right, what time did it get to Nashville?" He said, "Well, that's Central Time."
I went back after our meeting.
The old travel.
I'm glad you did, because I had,
Get there.
I went back after our meeting that day, and I looked in my area, I was like. And, I was planning on bringing it up and stuff.
There ain't.
We're ready? Okay. I'll call to order the reconvening of our February meeting today, and we'll move right into it. Are we gonna have anything on the screen or?
No, sir, we printed it out.
Okay, so it's all,
Honestly, I
If you need
can
a
I can
packet.
barely see the screen. I didn't know y'all had the same.
so we'll move right into the approval of the agenda. I have a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Have a motion, a second. Second. And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, consent agenda, approve the reclassification in admin, and that's attached to your, packet there.
Mr. Chair, could we table this until our March meeting for further conversation?
Yep. What? Is that a motion?
Yes.
I'll second it. This is not what I thought it was, but anyway, okay. All right, so we have a motion to table that until Monday night. So do I hear, you got a second?
Yeah, I got a second.
Got a motion, a second. All in favor of that?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we'll just move that to Monday night.
Okay.
Next, item 3, political use of county buildings.
Wanted to bring this up, I don't need to go into the details. I got a call this week, from a, representative of a political party who wanted to use a county building for that political party to meet and have a fundraiser. And, so we're not that we're getting a lot of these calls, but they come up. And so, I wanted to get some clear direction on how you all feel about that, and if you think you all want a party as whether that happens, doesn't happen, and if it does, are there certain guidelines in that? So we are treating all political parties the same, and we'll do what you like. I just thought, when we
I don't
get the
think we
call,
should
I
get
want to be
into
able to give the same guidance to everybody that calls.
I feel the way the chairman does, I don't think we should get into that. I think that opens too many doors for disaster.
Right.
Okay.
My only, go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, the only, we already let them use the courthouse for precinct meetings and maybe the county
Okay.
convention. And I'm just saying that if you're gonna eliminate it, you gotta decide whether you're gonna do that too.
Okay.
But
And-
can
and to what
we
extent?
eliminate it from the courthouse?
But and to what extent, like, what if we want to rent part of Scotland Place? That's a county building, you know what I'm saying? So are we saying
I
that particular
presume-
buildings we don't want them to use, or?
And are you saying you won't let them rent them at all?
Yeah, we
Or
have.
if they want to rent it, they can rent it and do, so.
I just personally
There's a
don't
lot
think them using our building says that we are endorsing anything. They're just using our space. That's my feeling. If they rent it, I mean,
Well, this is kind of a subtopic to this, not specifically for that. But I learned this week that we're not renting IJ or Laurel Hill, and I presume Wagram. We won't rent it out after business hours.
you know,
And that's
I
something
learned
we
that-
may need to
I
have,
learned that this week too.
we may need to have a separate conversation about, but,
Yeah.
So you know what I mean?
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean,
Is that something the commissioners put in place, or is it something
no.
somebody just decided to do?
I'm assuming.
I think it
I
just
learned
kind of
that this
flowed
week
with
too,
their
so.
regular operating hours is what I understood it.
Right.
They had to have
And it-
extra staff for.
Right, and it may be that, it may be a staffing issue, maybe about, recruiting part-time staff and their only work when it's kind of like they do Scotland Place. They have a part-time staff and that person only comes in when somebody's renting Scotland Place after hours. So maybe it's that type of issue. But I think it's one we can solve because we have some nice facilities and I'm sure people want to use them on the weekend.
Well, that's why we're
Especially
building with them rooms.
When we
so
open
they can
up,
rent.
I keep saying our cafetorium over at I. Johnson, when that opens up, I'm sure people will want to use that, especially that stage.
Right.
on
Not
weekends.
to get off, I do have a question about that. When we do rent these buildings, do we have tenants there when we do rent these buildings?
Mhm.
Yeah.
We do, and that's what I'm talking about. They have one part-time person on the roster that comes in, opens it, he stays, and then he's there to close it up. And then I know there are also.
Through the whole event, whatever the event
If
is.
there's alcohol served, they have to have a law enforcement officer there. So they have certain rules for that as well.
Is it I mean, we don't require them to have security there.
We do.
Even if it's not alcohol.
Oh, I don't think so.
No, because I know I've been like birthday parties or something for an older person. And I don't think they rent them out for like teenager parties and that kind of stuff.
I don't
Scotland
think
Place.
so.
I think it's one of the rules. Back to the initial conversation though, I think there may be some limitations, like this room may not need to be used, or I know we had some concerns about EOC. But I do think we need to be open because in our small community, we have very limited space that can be used for functions and nice events. And some of those limited spaces belong to the county. And I think to close the door to all of those, close the doors to opportunities for not just political parties, but for events that may need somewhere to. I think we may need to limit where, but I think we need to consider making available some of our
I'd be
places.
open for more conversation on it, maybe.
What if, because I think if you are gonna come up with like limitations and buildings, it needs to be in something, whether that's
Yeah,
policy,
like a policy.
What if I start piecing something together and I'll bring it back to you?
Yeah.
Just
And then y'all-
curious,
Y'all can tweak it and,
not asking which party, what what building were they wanting to rent?
I. Johnson.
I agree with Commissioner Gibson. I think we don't have enough other resources for the people to use that aren't pretty expensive. If they can use some of our buildings, particularly our rec centers, I think all the community centers, they ought to have access to that.
So I have this one pending. I haven't given him a yes or a no, because it just so happened we were gonna have this meeting today.
And I think that's coming up for what they want to use it for, is like in March, isn't it?
I wanna say, yeah, I wanna say it was next month or like May. It wasn't like in the next week or so,
No, yeah.
but it will be a fundraiser.
Is that something we should talk about on our next meeting when we got the rest of the commissioners here?
If you'd like to. March, you mean like Monday?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I might can
we
even
need,
have
we need
something
to give them
sketched
an
out by
answer.
Monday.
We need to give them an answer.
Well, I agree. He does need an answer. The one that called even asked if he could come to a commissioner meeting. I said, you can always come to a commissioner meeting and there's a public forum piece.
So we need to make a motion for that, but maybe to the next meeting.
Well, we could just hold it.
Yeah.
Just hold it.
But I would rather not just conversation. April, if maybe you and the chairman and Brian could get together and have a conversation and bring a recommendation back, because if not, it is another conversation.
Right. Like to have something, start to sketch something
If y'all
out.
can get together and just,
But I mean, going back to what we originally stated, how these buildings were built to be for this stuff, and they're not all gonna be during business hours.
Well, I think there should be certain buildings that we can do this with.
Oh, no, yeah, I agree with that. But I mean, just like Laurel Hill, I mean, that was designed so they could go in there and rent it for a birthday party or other than business.
And maybe they're charged more if they do it in the evening, because we've got to provide additional staff.
Right. And they do have part-time, did IJ hire a part-time? I know they were looking.
They have a full-time and a part-time.
So they do now, okay. I think Laurel Hill's
And I
got
think they were
2 full.
approved for a second part-time staff, which I don't know that they would need there. That one would offset the other part-time staff, so, maybe that's one they have on the roster to call in for this kind of stuff.
All right, so we'll just table that until Monday night also. Okay. Item 4, Richmond Community College's request.
Okay, so this also came in this week, that's why it's been, you see it on your agenda.
But we don't have a paper for that.
You do not.
Okay.
Yeah, there was really nothing to give you. I got an email from Richmond Community College, and Beth can fill in some of the gaps here, make sure I have the numbers right. Richmond Community College each year is given close to $500,000 as the county is required to fund their capital needs at their RCC campus right here. So those are made in quarterly payments. Is that correct, Beth? So they're made in quarterly payments. They do not have to provide anything else, just tell us how they're using that funding. The request this week, they want another close to, I think, $39,000 to replace sewer pipes at, Covington Street.
And that's on this year's budget they wanted.
Yes, they would like to do it during spring break. When is spring break? In 2 weeks, maybe, a week?
Yeah.
Whatever spring break is. And so in talking about this, when Beth reminded me, well, we give them $500,000 a year. For these 2 buildings alone. So is this something we want to dip into extra? Or would you like for me to say,
Why,
where's your $500,000 going?
what's wrong with the sewer?
They are backed up. They are very old lines. I'm sure it's much like we've had to do with Johnson. We're fixing to have to do with DSS. They've had them cleaned out and it's just not working anymore.
I will say this, I think we did not fund them we had been funding them at a level. And we've been at that level for several years, and they asked for an increase that was not insignificant, maybe $60,000 or $70,000. And we did not give them all they requested, and they knew in advance that they were going to have some issues, both heating and air conditioning and some other stuff. So I'm not surprised to see them coming back.
But do we want to do it now or just wait until the budget clicks over in July?
Yeah.
That's the thing.
But my sense would be they wouldn't be, I think, y'all, if you don't know this, I'm on the board of RCC, so I know that this is a need that they have had and they've expressed. I think, not this specific item, but I think they've been responsible with the money that they have.
But my question goes to, and as you look at these 2 buildings over there, from the outside or physical appearance, I haven't seen $500,000 worth of work being done.
It's a lot.
I don't think everything we give them is maintenance. Is it?
But it's all capital.
I thought,
I mean, it's capital.
Beth would have to
So
tell me, I thought
As far
that was
as
the
we're
capital.
given a number, but I don't know.
Do
if
they,
we're specific.
did they give us anything to say what they do with that $500,000?
no, that's what she said. They just give it to them quarterly.
I mean, they don't give us nothing back to say, hey, we've done this.
We probably should get that.
And moving into next year, we can set that up.
I think we need to know what, know where our money's going instead of just.
And I'm not saying they haven't used it for capital over there, but it's just
Okay.
not visible
Right.
from the street. I haven't been in it, so. Do you know? I don't know.
I'd like to know where $500,000 going.
I mean, that's more capital than we gave the whole school.
I know, so.
Is that all we give, or do we give that 500 capital and something towards their operating? Or you
That
check
is-
it?
I don't
That's
think
all.
we give.
I think that's all we
operating.
give.
I think if you would ask Dr. McKinnis, they would get you that answer by Monday.
How have we used,
How the money we've given them has been spent.
no problem.
Does that come to y'all's board? I mean, do y'all see that in y'all's board?
We see the total numbers. We don't see
Okay,
we don't see
They
the
don't see the
individual items.
individual.
And of course, they couldn't have used their entire 500,000 yet because we're giving it
Because
in
they haven't gotten
increments, so, but they could account for up until now.
I know they send us a request every year. I don't see a copy in the folder for last year.
So we'll follow up on that. Is this something else you want me to bring back Monday? May have,
We're loading Monday up.
but
Um,
Because
Yeah, I
they
mean,
will,
if
they
you
do need an answer.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can get it, yeah.
Okay. All right.
We don't have anything else on the calendar for Monday night.
Monday is very,
Sound like we're
is,
taking care of most of it today.
well, I would say Monday's agenda is pretty light.
Oh, it's
So far.
good.
Oh, so that worked out.
So, yeah, certainly don't want it on in April. Okay,
All right, moving on to number 5, tax reevaluation discussion. Nikki Butler's. Yeah.
I'm just gonna come stand right here so I can have eye contact. Hi, I am here, obviously, because it is time for us to start planning for our revaluation. Revaluation, I have given, you all had that, okay. Did
Do you have one?
you get one? A timeline. I think there's some more in there.
okay.
At the front first, our revaluation schedule date is January 1, 2027. But we need to go ahead and start our process now because it will take us 2 years at least to complete it just after we start gathering data. So if we are going to contract any services out, which hopefully we will, you will allow for that, we need to put that bid out April or May of this year. So that's why I'm here today, so we can move forward in this process. And then I give you the further timeline, or the timeline, I break it down there for up until the actual 2027 date. In 2023, we did a random sample that is required by the North Carolina Department of Revenue, and we have to sample 1% of our improved properties. Improved properties being properties that have buildings on them. So we did a sample of 145. In that 145 sample, 77 of those properties needed adjustments. They were incorrect, and we had to do adjustments to those properties.
Upwards or down?
A combination of both, and the difference was the 114,820 in tax value, which I've broken down, and it's approximately $792 per parcel for that random sample. And then if you just, do your math and estimate that, then an estimated value of total parcels would be over $10 million. And then that's a possible potential tax revenue of $107,000 a year that we were not able to collect because we needed that property to be valued. So, and of course, it's not perfect because this is just an estimation based on that random sample. So with these numbers, that's a high number, 77 out of 145 that needed a change to it. So because of this number, I recommend that our county does a full measuring list, which we have not done since 2003. In your packet, there was some information that I put in there, or I had Jason to put in there, so it could give you statutes and that refer to revaluation process and what our duty is as a county. And in that, there's also on the backside, I think, the different types of valuations that we could actually do in the county that are acceptable. And I really believe that it's in the best interest of our county to do the full measuring list, just so we can be fair and consistent throughout the whole county and to every taxpayer.
Did you say the last time that was done was 2003?
Yes, sir.
But now, didn't we just purchase a bunch of software
We
to
did.
do that?
Yes, sir. So if we contracted out anything, which we would have to contract out our commercial because we don't have a certified commercial appraiser, and we will contract out our schedule of values. The going rate right now is anywhere from $25 to $40 a parcel. So that's a large gap, and I put the numbers there. That could range from 562,000 to 900,000 if you did the whole county. But because we have purchased this software, we can do the residential in our office, or we can do our residential appraisers can do those. And so that could be a savings, a possible cost savings of the $337,000 to $540,000 if we do that portion ourselves. And I do feel like that I feel confident in the ability with that program and our appraisers. I feel like that they will be able to do that. I do want you guys to take into consideration that our staff the majority of our staff is new, is fairly new. There is no one that will be working on this appraisal that has gone through another appraisal. So that's why I think it's important to have those commercial properties and that schedule of value contracted out. I do believe that once we get through this process, that it will be a much easier task moving forward if we retain our employees. So with all of that said, right now in our revaluation fund, we have approximately $310,000 that's available for spending towards this.
But we're gonna need more than that,
Yes.
apparently. Not a whole lot more. Do we have anything scheduled for that this year? Aren't we putting X amount into the
We
year?
put 100,000 in for fiscal year 24, and Mickey has taken into consideration that dollar amount.
Oh,
It was
that's
310.
considered.
Yes, and if I'm not mistaken, the software, she has taken out the 3 years worth of that as well.
Let me ask you, you said you were surprised that the percentage of those properties would be impacted. If they were, if the 145 parcels were improved parcels, why would you not expect them to go up?
Because improved doesn't mean that there's been a change. It just means that they have buildings on them. That's just, that is what, for the statute, that's what they use as that it's improved, meaning it's not vacant land, that something has been placed on it.
Okay, but it was considered because it was a piece of land that did have something placed on it during that period of time.
No, just period.
This period,
It's
okay,
just a random sample.
okay.
Well, just so you know, mine is not improved.
So let me make sure I understand what you are recommending a full list and remeasure.
Yes,
You are saying to contract out commercial and schedule of values.
yes.
And our staff will do all residential ourselves using pictometry that we have purchased because of what it allows us to do.
But you're wanting to put this bid out for contracted services next month. or-
It needs to be
April.
placed so we can have a firm that we can lock down that can help us.
Then that'll be completed by 26. And then the new valuation going into effect January 1st, 27.
That's correct.
And you say the last time this has been done is 2003?
That, a full measuring list, yes. Now, the last reval, I think, was actually, I think it was a street review only.
Like drive by and look.
You have to do it, I think by law, every 8 years. You can do it more often than that. But so I think the last time we did it was 19.
Yes, that is correct.
Because we had that one appeal for the guy with the roof.
Yeah.
But then that April 27th appeal process will probably be a little bit longer, would be a guess.
Yeah.
And it should be. If it's not, then we have not done our
That's
jobs.
what I mean. We'll have a
appropriately.
longer list of
Yeah.
appeals for that. So
And the good thing, usually when you do contract those services out, they will stay and cover any kind of appeals that are on the properties that they contracted for.
all right, so you don't need any action from us today, right?
I just hope that when you are considering your budget, that you will maybe it may take more than the normal amount that you normally allot this year.
Well, I do think we need some sort of decision so we know when we are contract, if we need to put a bid out, that needs to go out before this budget is probably
Right,
settled for next year.
but we
Where,
should,
if you're leaning any certain way or
no, I don't have a
have
problem
any
with
preference
it.
for a full list or not,
But just if you put it out for bid, you're not have to pay it then.
No, it'll be in installments, I'm sure.
So, I mean, we should have the funds there to cover it till we get into the next year, right? So, I think that would be the way to do it.
Okay.
I think that at least the consensus of the 4 members of the board are here is that we should move forward with this.
the
Yeah,
full
yeah,
list.
yes,
The full
Okay.
list.
Yeah.
That's-
Yeah, it's time, it's
It
time.
hasn't been done for 21 years this time.
Thank you.
Thank you,
ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, moving right along here, land fee schedule approval.
Land fee schedule. So, I have brought to you a recommendation to add one fee to our land fee schedule. If you can remember, at some point over the years, our landfills stopped taking commercial trash, commercial product from even vendors in Scotland County. And so we need to start that back. People that could bring their, or commercial businesses that could bring their waste right to our landfill and we make money off of that, we're sending them everywhere else. We have commercial providers that are ready to do that and can't wait to the day they say, come on, because they're gonna save money.
Define commercial solid waste.
Commercial solid waste is what, like, if you have a commercial business that's out picking up trash. Whether it's because people are privately, contracting with them,
Like Scotland Waste,
right,
like Scotland
Waste
Waste.
management,
See, they're
right.
taking
We
their
would not
stuff to
allow
St.
them to
Paul's.
bring
Oh, okay, I get
At
what
some
you're saying.
point,
Yeah.
These
it will
dumpsters
stop.
around, they put around, they take it to St. Paul's,
Okay.
instead of bringing it to us.
Exactly, at some point that will stop.
Yeah.
And so we even have vendors out of, like maybe Fayetteville, who are servicing here, they would bring part of their waste to us. What they collect in Lawrenceburg, they bring it to us. So, however, we're ready to do that, and we want to do that. One thing we're gonna run into is there are times where there are light loads that are brought in. If they bring in a load that doesn't reach at least a 2-ton minimum, we're gonna end up losing money on that because what they pay will be so low. You know, we've had the discussion about the fines for light loads. When we send them out, we need to make up for that.
So we're still gonna transport it to
We
Montgomery.
still have to transport it. It still has to be
Well,
picked
now,
up
some
and
of it goes
transported.
on the hill.
Right, depending on what
Yeah.
they bring in.
Right, yeah, but I mean, just a regular, they dump the trash at parties and bring it out there,
Yes.
it's gonna get on a truck.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
gonna get at our transfer station and be sent out. And so, in order to help us offset those fines, what we're proposing, if it's under 2 tons, when they come in, we put a minimum fee of $125 on that.
And that makes up the difference.
That can help definitely make up the difference. And Mr. Bill did a lot of work, I think he ran some of that by Ms. Beth, of when we were taking commercial, what that looked like, the average of, light loads that were coming in, and we weren't doing a fee then. So now we recognize if we start this, we probably need that flat rate.
Well, I think we don't need to allow people to bring less than that amount if it ensures that we lose money and not do something to make up that difference.
Right.
Otherwise, if it's more than 2 tons, it's already $60 tipping fee for us, and then they, of course, they get state tax, so. Otherwise, they would just pay that according to their weight.
They gotta pay at least 2 tons, no matter what they bring.
$60 per ton. So that's gonna be
Exactly, so
the-
they're gonna pay
that's
at least 2 tons.
What do you need from us? A motion to approve?
Yes, sir.
So moved.
I'll say.
All right, motion and a second, any other discussion? The only one I've got a question is on the scrap tires, there's nothing currently there, and we're gonna,
That's because the scrap tires, if you look over at it says undocumented scrap tires. So I know I'm not gonna be dangerous about this. If you have tires that are coming in that are like commercial tires, you have some kind of certification or something with those. If they can produce that, we take them. If they can't, we have to charge them because there's apparently something we have to do with that.
Okay.
That 410 also allows us to bring, for just people who are bringing their car tires as well. Average tire is about 20 pounds, so it breaks it down like that.
all right, we have a motion and a second, any further discussion?
I got a call from somebody, it's been a year ago, who he picked up tires beside the road that people had thrown out on his property. And I think he had something like 82 tires.
Out of the side ditch.
I got that same call, yeah.
I got the same call too.
And so we're saying that we would charge.
No, part of what's in your ordinances, and we're keeping those in the ordinances that we hope we talk about Monday night, is like a good neighbor ordinance that would allow us to waive the cost for something like that.
Yeah, because of who that was, it's the same person, he wasn't changing tires, he wasn't selling.
Oh, no.
Yeah, he just picked up tires.
And you know, that's kind of a, we're going on your honesty. You bring in all those tires until.
Well, if he brings in 80 tires today, and we say good neighbor, dump it, and then he brings back another 80 next week, then
Well, there's some
something
kind
there.
of trend that
Yeah,
shows
there's
us.
something.
Well, also, just the guy that I think he's talking about, when he got to the landfill, he's an elderly fellow, well, not elderly, I'm not gonna say elderly, but.
Well,
He's
tell
an
him-
older
come on, tell him.
He's elderly. He's an older.
He's not as
gentleman.
elderly as me.
And
so
what's
that
your
makes-
phone number again?
Yeah, mature, he's a mature fella.
What's your phone number again?
And they made him stack the tires into a Connex. And
Was he at the recycling center or the landfill?
he went to the
To
landfill.
the landfill.
And they made him stack the tires into a Connex, which took him an hour to do because he had to sit down every little bit. And,
Okay,
and it was just,
we need to know stuff like that.
yeah. And,
We can certainly help out our.
I think we need to be more accommodating to our customers, because that's what they are, our customers. So we need to be more accommodating to our customers and help them with that. You know, if you got a,
Especially if you got an 80-year-old man out there.
right, and you know, when he backed up on
And I have a feeling, and that's something that probably we would have to work on at our scale house, because the way it works, you come to the scale house, Miss Deidre does that, and then these people know after that where to go, where the tires go in the tractor trailer. There's nobody that just up there.
Right.
She could call somebody.
but not just that, but see, you've got a lot of elderly or mature
Thank you.
people that come in and go up on the hill with their pickup to dump, and sure be nice if they can get help,
Right.
you know, because they're having to unload this stuff, and we don't want nobody to have a heart
No,
attack.
well,
we wanna-
we don't wanna be liable.
We want to
for
make
them
it
getting
friendly to
hurt.
people when they come in there, you know, we want to be friendly, and we want them to come back there and not take their stuff to St. Paul's.
All right, I think that's getting off of the motion and second here discussion. So anything else related to the fee schedule? All right, so all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, though. Moving on, moving right along. Zoning fee schedule approval. Mr. Milligan, there he is.
Well, as you can see, on the zoning fee schedule there, the zoning department is proposing, right now, they charge $50 for a zoning permit, whether it's residential, commercial, or, they're proposing to charge $50 for residential and then charge $100 for commercial zoning application fees. And then they will have on the fee schedule, any development started without the proper permitting will be charged double permit fees. And then on their application, at the bottom, they put on the bottom of it also, so whenever someone comes in with an application, they see, any construction done prior to the issuance of a permit constitutes a penalty to double the permit fees.
Is this what the fee is now,
That's what.
or is that what you want to
No,
do?
that's what the fee is now on top, and then just the proposed down at the bottom,
Okay,
where you see it.
Okay, I see it.
Commercial. And then, that would also be where if they were getting a conditional use or a variance or something, then we would double those if they started using the.
So that would have hit the place out at
That's
Clayton.
right. And that's where this is stemming from. We would have doubled that $300 plus double the $100 for commercial. So that permit would actually been $800. They would have had to pay instead of just the $50 that they had to pay plus the $300. So $350. And that permit would have went to $800.
This was also reviewed by your policy committee.
That's correct.
And
Yeah,
and
this went
this
to
is really what they proposed, to just double that if somebody had gone through the appropriate permit process.
And originally what we had talked about, I think at the commissioners meeting, is that we would up the application fee or the whatever that, with that, but we didn't talk about the special use permit fee. And we thought doubling it from $50 to $100 wasn't gonna discourage anyone. Doubling it from $350
to 800.
to $800 would make a difference.
all right. We need to make a motion on this? Yep. I make the motion then.
I said,
All right, so we have a motion and a second to approve the zoning fee schedule as attached to the agenda. Any other discussion or questions? All right, all in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, sir. Oh, you're knocking this out. Fiscal 2024 performance report, Beth Hobbs.
Right.
Now we come to numbers.
Now, this is-
In your packet, there is a lot of information. Most of that is detailed revenues and expenditures. On the top page, you've got a summary sheet. We originally budgeted revenues at 50.5 million. We had transfers from other funds of 757,000, and we had appropriated fund balance of 2.2 million for total revenues and other sources of 53 million. We also budgeted expenditures at the 53.5 million. I'm showing a few amendments that we had through here. Our revised budget with the amendments total 56 million. Expenditures also 56 million once we did the revised budget. We've actually brought in 32.2 million. We're expected to, we've got a remaining budget of 24.1 million that we're anticipating collecting most of that.
Question,
Yes,
the amendment on fund balance, $2.1 million, what was that?
yes, I've got a cover sheet that I'll go over
Okay.
toward the end of this packet here. So we've collected, we've collected 62% of our revenues compared to our budget, and we've expensed 73% compared to our budget. Right now, we are revenue we are over 125,000 compared to budget versus actual.
But that's based on,
That's just as of
we
January 31st.
continue to get the 24 million, yes, yeah.
The next few pages are just the details of what made up that cover sheet. But unless there's any questions, I'll go to the next one. Or to answer your fund balance question, there is a sheet for fund balance appropriated. The original appropriation was 2.2 million, and I've listed the projects or items that we purchased with those.
So that's all down in there, right?
Yes, that should have been like the fourth or fifth page in.
But when we say fund balance appropriated, that's not necessarily come straight off the fund. I mean, some of that was money that we get from COVID or art funding or.
Yes, sir, I broke some of that down. I wanted to give a true picture of what actually came out of fund balance with the items up at the top. That was the 2.2 million. Those are the things that actually came out of fund balance.
That were not ARPA
That were
funded?
not ARPA.
Okay.
The next little section is the revised, which would answer your question of where the 2.1 came from. These were rollovers from projects that had already been allocated or started that were not completed by June 30th. And some of these were revenue streams as well for grants. So they gave the total appropriated fund balance of 4.4 million. And then below that is what were ARPA funds that were allocated, which was 457,000.
All right,
So my question for clarification, and I've asked you, but so our commissioners can hear it. On this page, walking into fiscal year 25, we'll have a fund balance of X amount of money. How much of it have we already spent?
So that I've got on the next sheet.
Okay,
So this is my summary of projected revenues and expenditures that will carry us through June 30th.
through June 30th.
Yes. The revised budget is 57.4 million for revenues and expenditures. Anticipating collecting 94% of revenues, which is 49.9 million. Expenditures, we're looking at 53.3 million, which is over, of course, what our anticipated revenues will be. We will have a shortfall of 3.3 million. Of that, we have appropriated 3.9 million in fund balance, and we will get back into fund balance to cover the overage of 623,000. And looking at, from a percentage basis, we're looking at fund balance being right at 15%, which is right at our threshold of not falling below 15% with our fund balance policy, which I also have included in your packet.
Will that number, that 7.7, be minus the 623, or will that be after the 623?
That's already taken into consideration.
The 623.
Yes, sir.
So we
All right.
feel like walking into next year,
We need to be very careful with
Leave the
what
fund balance alone.
we need to be very careful with what we appropriate, if any. And as I've stressed to the departments, and they'll tell you, I've screamed this whole year, this has been a very tight budget. And I anticipate going into fiscal year 25 with it being the same.
when I think one of the things Beth mentioned to me was she's never seen expenditures at 100% like that.
Not since I've been here.
And one thing Beth and I talked about as well, that 94% revenue, I think that looks a little lower. Am I correct that you're used to seeing?
We're used to seeing at
Um,
least 96, 97%.
So after this meeting, she and I will take a deep dive to figure out where's our revenue at. Is it something uncontrollable, or is it something controllable that we need to figure out why aren't we getting it?
Right.
And there again, that was the summary sheet, and I've got the detailed revenue and expenditure sheets behind. And if there are no more questions on the general fund, we'll roll into the landfill.
I'm
Just let me know when you're
still
ready.
looking at
Okay,
this.
y'all let me know when you're ready.
There's one listed, item 5070, it's listed as coronavirus, budgeted 25,000, we amended 378, revised budget 403, because is that part of the ARPA fund?
That is, the 5070, no, that was a grant for the health department. Those were funds that were rolled over from a previous year
Okay.
that were unspent.
And I think, Tim, or someone's asked you this question now. We're saying that we've appropriated 4.4 million in fund balance.
That is correct. With the rollovers and then the actual items that were purchased at the top half of that at the 2.2 million.
And did, how much of that money came out of, did any of that 4.4, were any of those ARPA funds?
The 4.4, no. The 457 listed below, that is strictly ARPA. That above is not.
We need to leave the fund balance alone.
I guess I didn't realize we had allocated that much money.
I need it.
Well, and
And some of this, like with the rollovers, some of those funds have not been spent yet because they're grants. And so just to let you know that they've been appropriated doesn't necessarily mean that some of the grant funds have been spent. The COVID grants, those are probably going away at the end of the fiscal year, if not before. So whatever is left there may end up reverting back to the funding source.
Mr. Chairman, I just, in my mind, I'm like y'all, I don't remember us allocating to that extent, but I do recall like conversation like the partners in ministry, it was, we couldn't use our funds, but we could move something else. It wouldn't hurt
Pay
us
for
like.
something else and.
Yeah, but it's not panning out that way, the way I imagine it would.
Doesn't look like it. I mean,
And two, if looking back at the projects that we have done with Laurel Hill and with Johnson, just with those funds that were appropriated out of fund balance for, I guess, 2-3 years ago, if maybe even 4, that's almost $5 million between those two projects that were utilized instead of us going out for loans.
which was the intent, but,
Right.
I don't know, maybe it just didn't register, but I guess the moral of this story is we gotta leave fund balance alone this year. Lock it
Couple of
down,
years.
lock it down,
Next couple of years.
yeah. And see what we can do about building it back. I mean, I'm not that 15% is bad, I mean, it just, but
If it falls below, according to policy, we've got to figure out, and I say
yeah.
we have to figure out what to do, and with the revenue streams limited, it's very difficult.
Well, that was one reason we decided the Laurel Hill and all would be taken out of that was because we had a lot in there and didn't necessarily like that much money sitting in there. We needed to do something.
Because you also don't want to be above a certain amount.
Right, yeah, you don't want
We
too
were at
much.
22%.
Right.
Beth, this is the commissioners.
That is a
Policy,
policy
okay.
that was approved
Make sure
back
I
in
understand.
2015.
Okay,
Oh, for the fund balance.
yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Moving right along.
All right. Moving over to the landfill. We had a total budget for revenues of $3 million, total expenditures $3 million. We have not had any amendments, so we'll remain at the $3 million. Our year-to-date, as of January 31st, is $1.4 million for revenues, which is 47% of our budget. We've expended $1.1 million, which is there again, 47% of our budget. Right now, we have total revenues over expenditures of $301,000. My projection for June 30th will bring in $2.7 million, which is 90% of our budget. And we'll expend $2.4 million, which is 83% of our budget, and leaving us with total revenues over expenditures of $208,000. Cash on hand at July 1st of 2023 is $1.5 million, and I'm projecting cash to be around $1.7 million.
One thing I think, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in while you're thinking about things.
No, go ahead, Jim.
One thing Beth and I have talked about, and I've mentioned to Mr. Bill as well, is we've got to work on our closure fund at the landfill. That's a requirement. We do not have in that closure fund what we are required to have. And so each year, kind of like, it's almost like the fund balance for the landfill, we're gonna have to start moving money over to that. Landfill, I feel like, is in a good position in that they have basically almost brand new vehicles out there, so we're not looking at replacing those. They've got some equipment needs in the next few years. We'll see, that could be large purchases. And then, of course, we know we've got some projects coming up in the next few years, like the scale house we talked about that we'll address. But overall, I feel like it's in pretty good
They're
shape.
in better shape than what they were a few years ago.
And it is an enterprise fund, so we can't take any of their funds and pop it over to the general fund, unfortunately.
Would be good.
We could.
And also with, this is the summary sheet attached to the back, or the detail of the revenue and expenditure categories. The projection sheets are also attached to the back as well. I was able to cram everything on the front page for the summary for this one.
So I'm curious, this is a question that I can answer. In an enterprise fund like that, if you ever get your balance if it does so well, it just has to sit there?
That it remains there. That's like with
There's
the,
no,
that's like with the landfill, we've got the availability fee. And that was implemented a few years ago. And that fee, if we get to a point with the landfill in general where we have the excess abundance of cash, then we can look at lowering that fee. So we got some flexibility there, but as far as moving funds and stuff out, it's, you look at like your fee schedules and things like that, that you can reduce if you see that there's an overabundance of cash. And I will, I did make a note on the projected revenues and expenditure sheet for the landfill. We did have conversation with FEMA, and we are looking at paying back the revenues that we received from FEMA of approximately $80,000. Looking to pay that back this fiscal year. What happened is, as the feds were reviewing the project at Sneeds Grove, they thought we should have received more insurance monies than what we did, so we had to go back, reopen the case with the insurance company. Insurance company wrote us a check. So with the flip-flop of monies, FEMA says we've overpaid you, so we're having to send some of that back.
we got on a phone call and tried to fight that. We
Yeah,
lost.
that was
We lost that.
Did we have some projects they didn't pay us as much as they should have?
unfortunately not. This was our largest one.
Okay,
Of course, they only overpaid. They
Yeah.
never underpaid.
And
right.
all right, if there's no more questions on the landfill, we'll go into the water districts. Water District 1, revenues, budgeted revenues of $650,000, had amendments of $83,000. And the amendment for the $83,000 is it's the remaining funds from the bonds that we went after a few years ago where we refinanced the water district bonds. We still have money there in the bond fund that we can apply toward debt service. So this is moving funds into the water district to cover those payments. So revised budget is $733,000. As of January 31st, we brought in 56% of our revenue at $407,000. Total expenditures of $310,000, which is 42% of our budget. And right now we're revenues over expenditures of $97,000. My projection for June 30th, revised budget remaining at $733,000. We should bring in 98% of our revenues, total $720,000, and expend 90% of our budget at $664,000, which leaves us a surplus of $56,000. Cash at July 1 of 23, $1.4 million. And I'm projecting cash to be around 1.5.
Why do you think the projection drops so much from mid-year to what we think will be at the end of the year for revenues over expenditures?
For the water district. So the water districts, this particular, Water District 1 and Water District 2 have kind of flip-flopped. When everything was redistricted, we were in 2 districts, now we're in 5. So everything has kind of, what was in District 1 is not in District 1 anymore. It's part of it's in District 2 as far as our bookkeeping goes. So we're looking at bringing in more on this particular Water District fund, because now in Water District 2, that's where most of our expenditures are coming in for the wastewater treatment plant. So
Out at Cascade?
out at Cascades. So we were doing really well in one water district. And now, like I said, everything is kind of flip-flopped with the two.
I think what I'm asking is for only Water District One.
That's Water District One.
At the end of January, our revenues over expenditures is 97,000, but we project it's only gonna be 56,000 by the end of the year. Is there? So I'm guessing you're all, okay.
Well,
Well, no, I
they're
see,
they're
I
also
think
looking at the
the top one
expenditures going way up.
is the actual as of
Yeah,
January
right,
31st.
right, that's actual. Now, we still have a debt service payment
That's
that's
what it
due.
is then, that's gonna
So
drop.
that's
Okay,
due, at the end of, June.
that's gonna be big, okay,
Right.
I get it. So I'm assuming now that we have 5 water districts, we are still okay to only like break our budget out for 2
Yes,
of them like this?
yes, we did ask that, and it was we could break them down into 5, but it would be pretty, yeah, it would
Just be
be,
more work.
yeah.
But now, and I don't see it, and you could point me to it. This water line project on North Turnpike,
That's in Water District 2.
right? Is that 1.1 million appropriated fund balance?
That includes the 750,000 from the ARPA dollars that I transferred in fiscal year, 23 into 24.
So we're accounting for it, it's not gonna be.
We are, it's in that fund balance amount, 750,000 of that, 1.2 is the ARPA dollars.
So that won't be a surprise.
No.
All right, any more questions? Okay. Debt service, is that where we're at?
That's where we're at.
And we do 2 already?
So this is just a snapshot of where we are. We've already made the debt service payments except for the last interest payment that's scheduled for May. What I have listed here is what will be due for fiscal year 24-25 for your principal and interest. And over in the far right-hand column, showing the principal remaining after we make the fiscal year 25 payment and the payoff dates.
The school wings is Sycamore.
That's Sycamore and Laurel Hill.
And this is going backpedaling before my time here, but this 5% rate on these things. There's no way to go back and look and see if there's something. Cause I know a bond rate would be less than that now, but I don't guess we can backpedal and do that.
You would have to go back and refinance and go through that process again.
But you couldn't, if you did it as a bond issuance, it wouldn't. I don't think you can go backwards and do that. You follow what I'm saying? I don't,
Yeah, I'm
because
not sure.
you're not gonna get a refinance at that rate. But you could get a bond issue.
And I think that's what we did with the water district, is that when we refinanced that all in that one, when we did that whole bond issuance, I think you're right there, we can't go back.
You can't go
We
backwards.
can add to
We
it,
could go forward,
right.
but you can't go backwards. Because I'd like to see that 5%, that 2% or 1.5% would save us a lot of money. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but
Over time.
interest
that's a
rate,
lot.
it would save a lot of money, but
The kind of interest we're paying, it will.
so we're stretched out to 2037 at least. 2038, really.
No, that one's not a lot of money. No, it is too. That's living the other way.
So basically, this means the county is in debt $33 million as of this.
Yes, and that's, yes,
Or
as
after
of,
the next
after,
payment.
yes.
Sure would like to see it less than 5%, but I don't know a magical way to do that right now. 'Cause I don't think you can go backwards and do a bond issuance on it now and get a better, maybe a 3%. And if you just outright refi it, you're not gonna get that right now. Not that I'm aware of. Of course, you couldn't, I'm talking that you couldn't refinance this stuff together anyway. It still have to stay in separate projects. But even the school wings and the South Johnson, you know, y'all really want to calculate. We got, how many years is that? 14 years? 9, 16. 18. Oof, come on, 10. And who says you'll never use algebra when you learn it in school? 14, well, 15 years, 180 months minus 1,200. One is so on 42. It would be in the neighborhood if you could get to 3.5. It would be in the neighborhood over the next 14 years of saving about roughly $3 million in interest. But I don't know if it's possible. I don't know if it's possible. I don't know if it makes
It's something we
sense.
can research.
Yeah, I mean, we could ask the
You can, you
question,
can,
but I mean, I also don't want to spend a lot of time in it when it's not possible.
Right.
I don't know anybody out there giving 3.5% on anything right now, but you never know. You never know. And I don't think the other two, or even the water districts, would be worth redoing it right now, even though you might get it at a lower, I don't think it would. Even if you didn't decrease the principal payment on those two lines every year, you may could reduce the years by 4 years or something. I'm not even gonna try to calculate that, but, I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud. Anybody else got anything to question on that? All right, we'll move along. I see we have that Scotland County fund balance policy, but that was just for our information.
That was just for
right?
information.
All right, so have you got anything else?
That's all I have.
All right, perfect. All right, we'll move right into the fiscal year 2024-25 cost of living discussion.
So, this year, and you have something that looks like this only.
Oh, is that what that is?
Yes, sir. So this year, I thought I would, take your conversation, how I've seen COLA done in the past and flip it, reverse it. And you talk about that before a budget is presented and no COLA's been put in it. And you say, well, go put something in there, right? And then Beth's is scrambling to try to figure that out. So thought we'd get your thoughts on, COLA early, so we can try to build that in early before we start plugging in a bunch of operational expenses. And so these are just some projections of COLA, what it will cost the county. Basically, for every percent, $250,000 is what you need, approximately. So I'll just open that up for what goal would you like us to see us work towards? I know that's almost an impossible.
Yeah.
So I get what I'm asking.
Yeah.
And half the county sitting behind us waiting.
Yeah. In fact, they all lean back, right?
I understand what
Sitting
I'm
there
asking.
looking at us.
What you gonna do, huh? I'm waiting for somebody else to say something.
Well, let's do this. Talking about flipping things, what does the county manager recommend?
10%. So
All right.
it's a very difficult situation. You know, we talked about this or it came up, from other counties at our meeting the other night down in Lumberton. And, we did a great thing with the salary study, there's no doubt, and it brought us back competitive, but then the very next year, boom, here you go with the city giving out 6 or 7 and Richmond this, and so, and we're doing, I think 1 last year, it's hard to keep up, because then 1 year we got 3, so we gotta keep ourselves competitive, and not everything is about salary, but it sure is the starting point when people are looking and we're recruiting.
What'd you say that number was per 1%?
It's on
About
that. It's on that page.
250,000.
Yeah, I know that.
It takes that for each
Yeah.
percent, so,
I think it's behind that.
you know, but I also understand, as Beth says, how tight this budget is going to be. And so you start weighing, and I've had this conversation with department heads before Christmas. Really look in your departments, really be objective. And what I challenge them with, as I said, to some degree, you can help us set the code. Because if you can find it operationally where you don't have to spend that, you don't have to fill that position, it can go upwards towards personnel costs. So kind of put that out there. Some department heads have absolutely done that and said, you know what, I don't need that position. I don't need that position. Or, so, that I think we'll always work on. And it's not all about positions, it's also just other ways we're spending money. So, I realize the reality over here, and I realize what it takes to be competitive over here. Those are 2 things that are hard to meet in Scotland County. Of course, me and Beth can run and crunch numbers all day and try to come back with something, 3% makes us have to find almost $1 million. That's tough. Because you're gonna flip and then you're gonna see all the personnel reports.
I was gonna say, it's hard to look at this.
Right. And the capital committee has seen all the capital requests, and that's where I say you gotta dig deep. Do you really need it, or do you just want it? Right?
Yeah.
You
Well, let's
gotta
move-
dig deep. What does the data tell you about your department?
Let's talk about that personnel request. Is this a want list or is this a recommendation list?
This is not a recommendation list. I am transparent list, like with capital committee, everything that was asked for, I showed you.
We appreciate that too.
Everything that's been asked for, I'm showing you, and what it'll cost.
And I say we appreciate that because there have been where department heads have come and said, well, I asked for this, but you all never saw it. So
Well,
I appreciate you.
I
letting us do it.
experienced that.
I've never
So-
seen it, never seen it before.
Yeah,
So,
so I appreciate it.
this is transparency to get a start on what you say, I want to fund that, or what you say, I don't want to fund that, or what you say, oh, let's table it and we'll come back to it.
So to me, we have to balance these.
They are, and that's why they're kind of put together.
What does the employees of the county want? More positions or more money?
Well, it does really come down, right?
Well, let's
Do you
go-
want to tighten your screws,
Let's move
or
over
do
to
you
the
want, and don't
person,
want to cut it?
to the position request, and we'll talk about them kind of one in hand in
And
hand.
some of these people are here, if they can add more.
Exactly. Can we take a small break?
Sure.
I don't mean to interrupt our train of thought.
Let's come back at 20 minutes after, 10
Okay.
minutes.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Frizell, that doesn't mean you can leave.
I'll go.
There's stuff over here to eat, biscuits, still, pastries. I didn't see no glazed croissants,
I
but
think,
you know.
there's a.
What did Dorothy bring in? You brought it in 2 boxes or something.
but they're not the
Well, they're not the ice ones.
I mean, they're good.
But they're not the special treat. Are those souvenirs?
Yeah, well.
No. Just thinking that.
We can't talk about you, you standing here.
So you can defend you, right?
At least you know somebody's thinking of it.
How are you doing, sir?
Lord, yeah.
Kurt, how you doing? It was like chocolate. Bursting out the side. I thought it was chocolate. Church. That's what it
These,
big.
you know, I'm not embarrassed to call him, no, I gotta call him, Kelly, for that, tell about the, I'm embarrassed to call him brother. He was-
I saw maybe it's about one of those.
I've seen the video of I running it. I mean, I was actually, that's what I got. You lock it up this. I figured that works. Okay, that's a video. Just got there. A little bit. Right. Doesn't know
I got one.
I'll take it to it. Yeah, I'll get this week.
Looks like you're making a
That's all right. That's 2 pounds. I'll hold on to 2 pounds. Tommy, how you doing?
city municipal.
Would you,
It's not what
I don't even know if she started that. It ain't even over. No. I just wonder.
I'm good.
It ain't on here tonight.
No.
Good to show you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the problem. I don't know. We gotta balance it I don't see how we got most of this.
No, that's a project. I'm gonna tell you what that is. 70 years ago.
Excuse me, please, sir.
I am. We decided. Okay, okay. I think we can come out there and take some more pictures from my
It goes back to before I became the regular, we all get started with plans and stuff at our coaching. And I probably would have designed the inside a little bit different than I did because there's not like that area for, and it's sandy. I'm limited to labs. I would have loved to have seen a whole exam. That's my, that is
Do you carry both of those phones around? Yeah, because when I had,
That's right.
I just did forward for myself. And I left that phone in the drawer.
Well, you were in an awkward position. They love
I think I had about 50 some odd pictures.
Susan has even, commented on it. I think this year's.
2-minute warning.
I've been saying.
Somebody else will call it.
Just Jimmy, you good? Oh, now what about office?
I used to lay out on my mama's roof, because I said, well, it's higher, I'll get a tanner. And I'm sure.
You all been
I won't mention any department. But I can tell you, Walt's talking about this. I won't mention how much, but I don't think nobody's gonna do it.
They included in. There's a difference.
Right.
I got tired. I've been too deep.
That wasn't gonna be my guess, but I mean, okay, I'll take it.
I couldn't be there.
Oh, she's a jewel.
All right, we'll come back to where we were here, and we were talking about person item number 9 and 10, basically in conjunction with each other. Let's go down that list request first. And I guess we'll just start at the top. When we started, when I first looked at that, it talks about a fire marshal. But, and Bo was telling me there might be something a little different in that, but I mean, I would think that our inspector / would be a fire marshal. I don't know that. So I don't know what the difference in the two are.
Has the fire chief served in that capacity before?
We don't have a fire marshal in Scotland County. And so, for some of this, I'll divert to Mr. Robert, because he knows a lot more about this than I do. I think some of the thoughts here came from, and I don't know that I recommend this for this year, but I think it's something to think about as we move forward for a couple of reasons. One, if this, program, for lack of better words, get kicked off with the volunteer firefighters, they're gonna need somebody to manage them. Two, if we had a fire marshal, clearly Robert can talk about benefits to the county. At some point, and I've talked to Mr. Thomas about this from inspections, our gentleman currently doing fire inspections, at some point when he retired or left the county, the fire marshal would take that over and we would no longer have to fund that position. So Robert, if you want to talk a little bit more about the benefits of a fire marshal?
Sure, be more than happy to. So what has brought this all about, commissioners, is the fire departments and as well as the fire commission has an interest in wanting to put paid firemen at all of the rural fire departments. And there's several reasons for that. Number one, as you all know, we only have one paid fire department in our county, and that's the city of Laurinburg. The other 5 departments are all rural departments, and they're all volunteer. One of the biggest issues that they are having, this is nothing new, this has been an ongoing issue, is exactly what I said. They're all 100% volunteer. And if you know anything about volunteerism, it's not near as strong as it once was. So some of the issues that they're running into is when they are required by the state that when they are dispatched to a structural fire, that they have to have a fire apparatus from their station respond, and they have to have a minimum of 4 people at that structural fire from their department to meet the minimum requirements. If they do not, then they are gigged for that by the Office of the State Fire Marshal. So they struggle a lot at times to meet just that one simple minimal requirement. So it is set up in with our 911 center today have automatic.
Right.
Yes.
Now, you said they were gigged for that. Does that mean they're put on probation?
That is correct.
And
So,
what, explain the probation.
so I think it's every 2 years, each department has to be inspected by the Office of State Fire Marshal. And there are things that they look at, and they're looking at are all of their members on their roster maintaining 24 hours a year of Con Ed. Okay. And then they also start looking at their responses. How many structural fires were they dispatched to? And then they take those structural fires and they dig down even deeper to make sure that there was at least 4 members from that department on the roster or the report as being on that call, and that an apparatus from that department responded. So, and I'm going to use an example to help you understand a little better. If Laura Hill is dispatched to a structural fire, by default, Gibson Fire Department and Laurinburg Fire Department will be dispatched automatic mutual aid to them. We can have 15 responders from those other 2 agencies and all their apparatuses respond. But if a fire truck from Laurel Hill Fire Department and at least 4 members from Laurel Hill Fire Department are not on that call report, then they can be and will get gigged for that. What are the repercussions? They are put on a 6-month probationary period. Okay. And that's not something that we want to see.
And what happens if they fail then?
And if they fail then their ISO rating in that district goes up, which is not what we want. We never want to see those ISO ratings go up. As a county, we're at a 6. Okay, which
If the ISO rating goes up, does that affect the homeowner's insurance?
It does. Not only the homeowner's insurance, but also any commercial within that district. Okay, it affects them as well. Okay, so what the Fire Commission Board as well as the fire chiefs have come up with is what can we do to try to help rectify this ongoing issue of concerns of not having enough responders and making sure that the apparatuses are responding to these calls during the day because our volunteers work. So what they're looking at and what they have proposed is to put paid firemen at all of the rural fire departments. This is on a part-time status, if you will. So that is the proposal that has been put on the board, to the board, is to start working towards putting paid firemen at all of the rural fire departments. Well, someone has to oversee this. Okay, we can't have 6 fire chiefs overseeing this. Okay, that's a recipe for disaster. So we have to have some
county employees.
And they will have to be county employees. Okay, that is another thing. If we're going to move down this route, go down this road, then those part-time firemen will become paid county employees. Okay, on a part-time basis. So with that, someone has to oversee this program. All right. It is in my professional opinion that if the fire commission wants to go down this path, that we've got to have a fire marshal or something equivalent to not only to oversee this program, but by doing that, it opens the gates to other responsibilities that this fire marshal can have. As we alluded to, doing inspections. Okay, every commercial business in this county is required to have fire inspections done. Depending on the type of business it is, determines how frequently those inspections have to be done. Some have to be done annually, some have to be done every 2 years, some have to be done every 3 years. But with that being said, that would also give enough of duties, if you will, to the fire marshal to be able to take on that and ensure that all of our businesses are being inspected as they need to. Not to say it's not been done now, but it would take that load off of the inspections department now. The other thing is Scotland County does not have anybody that when there is a structure fire that is certified to do fire investigations. We've never had that in this county. 100% of the time, when there is a fire in this county that requires an investigation to be done, SBI or someone of that magnitude has to be called in to do that. The fire marshal, once they go through those classes, they get certified that they can assist with law enforcement and help do fire investigations in our county. We are the only county that touches us that does not have a fire marshal. We're the only county. Okay, every county that touches us has a fire marshal. So this is a position that we've truly needed for many, many, many years. Okay, we've just never gone out and seek the position. If we're going to move forward with the paid firemen at every station, this is a total brand new program that has to be built. And right now, without this position, it's going to be a challenge to be able to build this program. Because number one, you're looking at a bunch of volunteers to do that. And then of course, that only leaves one other person. And with everything that I have, it's almost impossible for me to build a program that's going to take about 8 months to build.
So let me ask you this question. Will the fire commission be able to set this up without our approval, or is this something that still has to go? This is my first time hearing this.
It's gonna have to come through us. But I mean, since we're talking about it, the problem here is how you gonna pay for it.
I mean,
And you're talking about, if I calculate this right, 7 departments that would have to have five. But you've got 5. I don't know how. Say you can try to legislate it all you want, but you're gonna have 5 different chiefs that's got somebody in their department that don't answer to them. And I don't know how well that's gonna be received.
Well, and here's the thing, and that's a very, very valid point, but at the end of the day, it's a direction we have to go in. And change is hard, change can be tough, but sometimes change has to happen.
Right, but I mean, I guess the biggest thing, and this is from the standpoint of knowing how these fire departments work, because I did it for however many years. You know, today, if Laurel Hill gets a fire call, they're paged out, somebody nearby picks up the truck. And let's say the fire is across the street from the fire department. And he picks the truck up and he drives it 100 yards across the street. Today, he stands there and looks at that fire. He can't fight the fire because he's operating the truck. So I don't know how.
which would be the same if there's a person being paid that's there in the
Be the
building. He
same-
can't
be
do
the same.
anything
He
until
can't fight that fire.
at
and
least 3
operate
of the volunteers
that
show
truck.
up.
Right.
But it does get the apparatuses to the scene quicker, and it goes beyond this. So let me explain more. So what other benefits are going to be from having these paid firemen at the fire stations? As you all know, I've been very vocal about this, that because of the makeup of our county, from a public safety standpoint, we rely on our volunteers. Okay. Again, from the county, you got EMS and the sheriff's department are the only 2 paid services in the county that provide public safety other than 911. That's it. Everybody else is volunteer. So with that being said, that is the task that I have as the emergency services director, is how do I utilize the resources that we have? So now we have our fire departments responding to cardiac arrest, okay, with us. We have our fire departments and rescue responding to motor vehicle accidents that are dispatched as an unknown situation or higher, okay? So I'm having to utilize them more to ensure that we are providing the best services that we possibly can for our citizens, okay? So now that we're putting more responsibility on them, that's more time, that's their call volume is going to increase. So now when we respond to those cardiac arrests, okay, now we've got a paid person at that fire department that if we're dispatched to a cardiac arrest in Laurel Hill, now there's someone there, unless they're on a fire call somewhere, that can respond and get to that call much quicker. In a lot of cases, will be a lot faster than what we can do. And someone in cardiac arrest, time is of the essence. Okay, Miss April had the fortunate opportunity to sit in on our CARES registry meeting that we had last week, and we have some of the best numbers across the state. Okay, with the efforts that we're doing. And we're going to continue to improve on that. But it is what it is. It's the makeup of our county, and it's my responsibility to ensure that we're protecting our citizens the very best that we can.
Robert,
Okay.
if you're talking about hiring a part-time paid fireman at each of the rural stations. So that person is only going to be there how many hours a week?
Right now, it would be Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. Okay, it's what's being proposed. So we would have to build a
That's not
pool.
part-time.
No. We would have to build a pool of about 15 to 20 people. Okay. So it wouldn't be just 5 people. We're talking 15, 20 of our volunteers that has an interest in wanting to work part-time. And then this position would handle the scheduling to ensure that we're not going over 40 hours a week with these people, with the personnel. And they would work, plug in, this person may work today, and then someone else is going to work tomorrow, and someone else is going to work the next day.
Okay, if you're going to have that paid person there 8 to 5, is that when you're having the most trouble with getting apparatus and 4 people show up?
Yes.
But is that also the highest call volume?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, you would want them there when the highest, and I don't know what it is.
Well, actually, it is the highest.
Well,
Call value is during the
it
day.
is during the day,
Yeah.
and that's so you got 2 things: the highest call volume period, and it's also the most vulnerable time period where we're not getting the best response.
Because you're not getting a response because most of your volunteers are working other jobs.
That is
Or
correct.
maybe in
Wherever.
It could be in another county, or they could work in a position where they can't leave work, to respond. That happens a lot as well.
Well, I had a bulldozer to burn up, and we could see the fire department, and Laurinburg had to come.
And
And we could see the fire department.
I'll give you just another example. This happened just 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
We had a wreck in Laurel Hill. The fire department was dispatched. Laurel Hill Fire Department was dispatched to assist us on the wreck. Unfortunately, at the exact same time, they had a fire in Laurel Hill, and Laurinburg had to respond, and the fire chief from Laurinburg had to go pick up one of the fire trucks from Laurel Hill because he lives in Laurel Hill to respond to the call. So this is the reality. Okay, this is where we are. This is just the reality of it, and we can't sit back and ignore it. We have to address it, and right now, this is what we feel is the best solution to address an ongoing issue. But by doing this, it opens the door to be able to take on other responsibilities and basically get more bang for your buck.
So getting the finances to hire the 5 positions
I can.
is not going to work unless you have somebody to supervise.
That is correct.
And
So
hiring a fire marshal without hiring those people doesn't solve your problem.
that is correct, because someone's got to build all this. So what the Fire Commission Board has agreed upon was to do this on a 1-year trial, if you will, to see if it's going to work. Okay. We feel confident that it is, but we've got to start somewhere. And the Fire Commission Board has agreed to fund $100,000, I believe it is what they agreed to fund. And I've got the number, but I just don't have it before me. To start funding that project for the first year.
Can I pause on that?
Mhm.
That's something you're about to say.
So actually, Danny Britt, I'm on the fire commission board, so Danny Britt has gave us $100,000 to start the program.
So that's my question. They
That's-
haven't agreed to fund an extra $100,000.
That's
The money has come from the legislature.
that's correct.
Right. So they haven't agreed to give up any of their money.
Well, what they agreed to do is to upfront the money to get the ball rolling, with an understanding that the money would go back in there once the state money came in.
How much is in the fire fund?
A lot.
I was gonna say, is this something the fire fund could absorb
Not
before?
long term.
They can pick up the salaries. We did ask that question of the School of Government. They can pick up the salaries
But if you don't mind me, go ahead, man.
Go ahead, while I'm looking for this, go ahead.
So one of the things that I think is important that everyone's got to know is that the fire commission has already started planning ahead 12 years from now to replace fire trucks. Okay, when the next round of fire trucks have to be replaced. All right, based off of what we're paying now, and of course, they're going to be a lot more. They have looked at, okay, we projected this is what it's going to cost to replace these trucks 12 years from now. At the current rate of the fire tax, the money's in there to pay for that. But if we start dipping into that money to start paying for all the other things, then you're taking away money that, as I make sure that they understand, is already pre-allocated 12 years from now.
Didn't they just all get new fire trucks?
Well, they got
I
new
wanted to see
tankers.
what the fund is.
Yeah, so there's 3.4
engines-
million right now.
But now those new trucks have been paid for,
Yes.
so there's no more to come out for the trucks. That's-
Not for that. We cut the last, let me rephrase that. We will cut the last check
There's
this week.
There's
for
there's one coming next week, and then we have two more.
tomorrow on order.
So there's
Okay.
three, so
So
that's
they're
another $1 million.
purchased- Yeah. So there's a purchase order out there for those.
So
but
now
that
we're
has
down
not
to
gone out.
2.5 million.
But based off of the calculations of what will be coming in annually, 12 years from now, when it comes time to replace the engines, okay, they're replacing the tankers now. In about 12 years, the engines will have to be replaced. Then the money will be in there to do that out of the fire fund. But if we start looking at this,
That's gonna eat it up.
it's going to eat it up.
So
So
the next question is, and Susan, I don't know if Susan's in here or not, then we're looking at having to modify fire stations for somebody to occupy. Because you can't just put them in there in a lounge chair
Do they not
or.
have offices in those fire
Well,
stations?
mostly they do.
they would be working. They
Yeah, I mean,
wouldn't
they'll
just
be
sitting there.
working.
They'd be working.
Because see, the goal here is to get the fire chiefs together, okay, and say, okay, fire chiefs, what duties, what are the responsibilities that y'all would like to see happen at your fire stations? Once all that data is compiled, then this person would come in and develop a daily work schedule, a
Good.
day-to-day work schedule on what you would be doing during the day. They're just not there just to sit around and do nothing and just wait for the tones to go off. The fire departments are required to do a percentage of fire hydrant testing within their district. Okay, that's an opportunity to get that done. Okay, there's other things within the community that's required of these fire departments to have to do. That's an opportunity to get a lot of these things done, with the understanding that this is being done to ensure that we're keeping our ISO ratings where they are.
Could it make our ratings go up?
But no, you actually want them to go
want
down.
them to go
Oh,
down.
well, could it make them go down?
It will help, but I don't know if it'll check enough of the boxes
But
We
my,
dropping
got
another-
it about as far down as we're gonna be able to.
that I think you're right. Yeah, the city's at a 4, but I don't know that there's a whole lot more they can do to go down much more than that.
but my question goes back to, and I don't know if it's an HR or a Lori answer or whoever, is what are you gonna have to provide in there? I know they're supposed to be out working and doing that, but there's still things that we're gonna have to provide in that station.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
like, I'm
right,
sure they
right.
need a computer. Which wouldn't be a huge expense, 5 computers.
Why would you need a computer?
Well, if they're county employees, we want them clocking in and clocking out. I'm sure whoever their supervisor might require reports, they need email, and something pretty standard.
But then you're talking about also internet access.
Right, you're right. Now, they could probably work off of my
I
box.
think they already got
Take care of
internet in this fire
They
department.
may,
Um,
they may have.
I
They
mean, just,
may,
I just think
a
it's
lot
like
of them may have already.
standard office stuff. And they already have offices and like a desk. I don't know that the startup for that would be expensive. We're not covering insurance and things like that. So I don't even know what the salary is for a part-time person.
So would we use like part-time people from the sheriff's department and here in the county or part-time?
You talking about-
No, they have to be certified. They would have to be certified firemen.
Certified pump
Fire-
operator or fireman, I mean.
Yeah, they have to be, and because they are now being paid they also have to have a Class B driver's license.
Yeah, 'cause-
I don't understand that. As a volunteer, you don't have to, but the minute you get paid, you have to have a Class B driver's license.
Exemption.
I don't understand that, but nonetheless.
Yeah, the medical.
Because it's, yeah, as long as you're a volunteer, you can drive any of them.
Yeah.
But if you get paid, then you gotta go get a Class B
You
or
have to have a
Class
Class
A.
B.
in some-
Class
Yeah.
B with a medical card.
Yeah.
So, and by default, by that may have to require, looking at, firemen from other contiguous counties that may have an interest in wanting to do some part-time work, to be on the part-time pool. So that's kind of the,
Because if our part-time firefighters now can't come because they're at work, how are they gonna work 8 to 5? Unless they're, on some kind of shift job or,
well, and that's why you have to have so many.
right.
I mean, you do. Let's think, I have 30 part-time employees for that reason. I can't survive with 10. I gotta have, when you're talking about part-time, you have to have an abundance of them.
Okay, I hate to bring this up. If we decide to go this direction and we want it to continue, how much would we have to raise the fire tax to pay for this?
So that discussion has been started. The chairman, Mac McDougal, has also said that, if this kind of goes off, and it does well, then they would possibly have to go back and present, an increase in the fire tax.
So nobody's tried the math on that yet.
Not at this point, no, sir. But it is a topic of discussion that would need to be done, obviously. I think Ms. Susan has.
I was just gonna say, you need to make sure that each of these part-time employees stay under 1,000 hours a year.
Oh, yeah,
Because at that point, they are eligible for retirement.
that is correct.
Which is
And that's
20 hours a
And
week.
that's another reason they gotta have a central person to report to.
Right.
Because if we left it to the fire chiefs, we don't know if they're gonna.
But I
monitor it or
think,
not.
and I wanna, cause I wanna move on here, but,
Mhm.
I think we're getting ahead of ourselves of hiring that position until the decision's made to do the other.
I
Well, the
agree.
decision's been made by the fire commission to move forward with this.
Well, and my
That-
advice has
that's-
been, if they think they've made a decision, they probably need to come talk to me.
Well,
Well, that's-
Because nobody's talked to the county
and
about it.
they need to come to us because they can't appropriate money without.
Well, and I have the answer to that as well. So there was that decision was made at the last fire commission meeting to have 2 members of that board to come speak with the county manager about the whole hiring process. Unfortunately, because of our current situation, that was not a priority to me to get that going. I mean, I had more important obligations with the cybersecurity stuff to work on. So that's on me. But that is something that does need to happen, is I need to schedule a meeting with the county manager, with the members of the fire commission board, to start the conversation on the county level.
Okay, well, we're not making that decision today, so, just moving on down the list.
Thank you, Robert.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Robert.
Can we,
I was gonna say the health department grant
well,
writer,
we need to move back up the list to his other 3
Oh.
requests.
paramedics and training.
The paramedics, the only thing I'll say about that is part of that 3-year plan he has to take from a 24-hour work shift to a 12-hour work shift. This is
Right.
year 2 of that plan,
Mhm.
year 2 of that plan. So that's what's needed if we want to continue down that course.
I thought we pretty much committed to that, so, I mean,
Right, so if that's a check.
and training officer. Don't we have a training officer?
That's a training officer for where?
I believe they want that shared between EMS and 911.
They're getting there one day now.
They can speak best for that.
They're
They don't have a
training.
dedicated training officer, I don't think, but they have, each have assistant directors. And I know 911 has supervisors who have been through training to be a trainer. So,
I can speak.
I feel like if we were a county that had a lot of extra money, that would be great. we're
But
not.
right now, somebody else can kind of carry that duty.
We are, but we're not very good at doing it. That's where we are. Our call volume is continuously increasing. So it is increasing a lot of the duties and responsibilities for that particular position. So, we are managing. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, we're managing. But I feel that there's definitely room for growth to where we can be better. And having that extra position split between the two departments would definitely give us that.
In terms of 911, we have quality assurance that we have to maintain by our law. We have been behind since COVID, significantly behind on getting that done and maintaining that. There's also mandatory continuing education that's required, that has to be scheduled and planned out. There are training academies, because you think for all the other public safety departments, for law enforcement, they have BLET that they go to before they start policing. EMS, they have to go to school to get their paramedic or EMT. For 911, we train you to do everything. They come in the door with a high school diploma or GED. They have no prior training unless they've already worked in a 911 center. So that's part of the reason that we could use a dedicated training officer on the 911 side.
Okay, like I said, we're not making decisions on that stuff today, so.
Okay.
I don't, unless somebody else has something to say on that. Grant Writer Health Department, if I read that comment right, we're looking at that other position to cover that with the county. Building inspector.
Hold on 1 second. Ms. Deaver, will that adequately, because I know Board of Health talked about that, with that,
I
we
don't
want
think
one.
that position would sufficiently fill the need at the health department. I know this is a sore subject. I brought it up last year. I'm gonna bring it up again this year. Scotland County is ranked 98 out of 100 counties when it comes to health outcomes. That's bad. Our numbers are high for STIs, teen births, infant mortality rates. And I think when I brought it up to the commissioners last year, I was tasked with, well, what are we doing about it? Well, there's a lot we can do about it if we had the funding, and there's a lot of grants out there that would work on these initiatives. But we've got to have someone that's gonna have the time to go and do the grants. Now, I've done several grants this year. I've brought in probably about $500,000 to my department on various grants. I do have 2 health educators, but they work specifically with the grants that I have brought in the money for. Part of their salary does come out of county funds, but I know one health educator, only 5% of her salary comes out of county funds. The rest of it comes out of her grant. And I feel like initially we would need county funds, but at some point that grant writer would be self-sufficient in the part that her salary or his salary would come out of grant funding. I think the county grant writer is really going to be probably focusing on grants that are larger grants for the county. There is a lot of public health grants out there.
We haven't talked about what the county grant writer is gonna do. So I don't know that we need to assume that they're gonna focus on any one area or just for the county. I think with the county grant writer, we can give them focus on where they want it to be. I guess I'm skipping ahead a little bit. My vision for the county grant writer is to, of course, help departments that need that. Departments can continue to do some of their own, but they need some relief as well, like Miss Amanda said. So I don't think we know what the county grant writer is gonna do. And I think it depends on where your need is at the time. If our need is in public health, that's where I would assume, I shouldn't say a majority and I shouldn't say just a little bit. It just depends on where the need is in the county. If it's public health, that's where they'll be directed. I expect the county grant writer to be working on several things at the same time.
And that's where my point
Yeah.
comes in. We're working on several things at the same time. If we're ranked 98 and we have been 98 out of 100 counties for several years, I mean, it's a sore spot with all of us. What are we gonna do to move that number, to improve these rates, the infant mortality rates, teen births, STIs? What are we gonna do? Are we gonna,
Well, how,
Just sit
but
here.
how does a grant writer bringing more money fix that?
the grant writer would find these grants, and there's plenty out there for public health, write the grants for I'm gonna use teen births. Find a grant that's specified for teen births, okay? Then that would fund the programs that we could work on to try to reduce teen births or reduce infant mortality.
So how do you do that? That's my question. How do I reduce teen pregnancy, if you want to use that?
You know, there's education out there, adolescent.
I'm
pregnancy
asking as ignorant, so
Oh, I
I'm
know,
not, it's
I
not
know.
a smart question.
No, I'm not,
asking as
and I don't
ignorant,
mean
so-
my response to sound
No,
smart.
no,
But there's adolescent pregnancy prevention programs out there that are evidence-based strategy programs. I mean, it's been proven, they're evidence-based.
But my question is, would not one county grant writer be able to do it all?
If we put their focus on that, yes, it will be up to me, I assume, if they're under me, where their focus is at. And I get that from the
Your department
director or
heads.
the DSS
Yeah.
director, and then I have to prioritize. And Amanda's got an excellent point. If we are 98, this is a focus right here versus if another department says, well, I'd just like to have this. You know, we need this. So I think, to Amanda's point versus can a county grant writer do it versus her having a part-time of her own, there's a lot of trust in that we'll, if we get a county grant writer, can she trust us to push them down that path? Because they would have to largely work with the department heads. Amanda knows what she needs in the terms of the grant she's looking for better than I do. So I do understand that there's kind of a trust in that. I don't know that we're in a position to fund both. We probably shouldn't. So.
Well,
That's kind of
okay,
where we're at.
and just in the interest of time, we'll just kind of browse through this real quick, and then we can all talk about it and talk with April about it. Some of this stuff is pretty self-explanatory. The public buildings is, I think that's a reclassification.
Yeah, those are both new classes that are
this-
minimal and probably what we need to do based on their current work duties.
Right, Parks and Recs looks like,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, sir.
can I back up for just 1 second?
No.
On the 911, it occurred to me after during this conversation, you know, when you start getting older, things kind of slow down and you get it a few minutes later. But you talk about the 911 classes and stuff. Don't RCC offer that? Could
No. There is an online program, for continuing education.
Because
Are you referring to?
I had a conversation with somebody not long ago about that, and they was telling me RCC now offers that. I'm sure they said that.
There is a new associate's degree program for 911. However, that is in the very early stages. I think it's in the second semester.
Was it you that told me that?
But it doesn't cover
Have-
continuing
It
education.
does
they
not,
have.
Yeah,
it,
right.
no, it does not cover continuing education, and it does not cover some of the requirements for actually working in a 911 center.
Right, right.
It does cover some of it, but not all of it.
Okay. Thanks.
But some of this we can continue to have discussions on. I mean, but I think with the notes and explanation over there, what I gotta say to this, that everybody in the room has got to keep in mind, and we still got to go back to this COLA thing.
We do.
Just for
And
budget.
the longer we delay some of these decisions, it's hard for us to move forward to give you different, I guess, budgeting options or bottom line numbers. So we can push it off longer,
Well,
but it backs us up
I think
in that respect to a degree.
well, I mean, here's my thought on it, because the thing that we all have to remember, whether you're elected or a paid employee or whatever you are, is this ask is gonna ask the average person in Scotland County to give me $50 more this year in personal property tax.
Are you looking like down at the total ask is over $600,000?
Right, so that's 3 cents on the tax rate.
Yep.
Right there. And that
And
asked
that's no
every,
COLA.
right, that's no COLA. That's not even figuring COLA. So, we gotta keep that in the back of our mind that every person we see, meet, and touch, we're asking to pay $50 more this year, just for this page. That doesn't count the cost of living page. So just keep that in mind. And I think as far as budgeting goes on this, you probably need to budget it the way you think what needs to be done. And then if we have to, stop it. Boy, that threw my whole train of thought off. If somebody or we get enough support to back up and add something back or do whatever, then we could do that. Once we get a clearer picture, we need to today, if we're saying the cost of living, we need to have a quick discussion on that while we have a quorum, because I think Mr. Gibson has to leave. And so while we had a quorum on that, I wanted to get back to that conversation real quick. And once again, we go back to, up to 2% is, that's $500,000. That's 2 cents on the tax rate. So we're talking about now, just with those 2 pages, now we're up 5 cents on the tax rate, upping it, just to cover that. What do you feel? What do you think?
Well, well, I mean, I go there. I think we've tried awfully hard to get county employees to be competitive with surrounding counties. And I think what April said is true. When we made the increases that we made with the salary study, that if we don't continue to add to that, we're just going to fall behind again. In my mind, I would think a minimum of a 2% COLA increase would be.
I was thinking the same. We know 3% is almost undoable. 1% will be a slap.
1% is real, it's
So let's
slap.
try to
I
shoot for
think we're
2.
gonna push it to the next meeting when the other commissioners are here.
Well, no, we're not gonna approve it right now.
No, we're just saying give them something to
We're
look
getting
at.
the consensus on, so they can
Okay.
calculate what the budget's gonna be. So,
Well, and I guess I'm throwing this out there honestly for anybody in the room to answer, even for our department heads. If you have to weigh out getting your new positions and all these capital requests, and I know it's not as simple as I say, if you have to weigh that out versus giving it back to your current staff, where are you falling there?
Yeah.
Anybody got an opinion?
well, I
I mean,
mean,
that helps Beth and I to think through things too.
Say that one more time.
If you have to, you can't do it all, right? So if you have to weigh out, you've got capital request in, you've got personnel request in, or we can supplement our current staff, especially the ones that have stayed loyal. Which way you go? Because you can't have it all.
well, you can have it all, but nobody sitting here will be here this time next year.
Right, you can have it all with the tax increase, and we know that is not usually up for discussion. Because you all have worked very hard for a very long time to drop the tax rate, so. I just kind of throw that out there. I mean, that's the decisions that we're faced with.
That's the reality of it.
That's the reality.
That's the reality of it.
But for budgeting purposes, consensus wise, use the 2% for
Well,
now.
we'll start with that. If we can crunch out
And you
3, or
could, well, yeah, I was gonna say maybe put a 3 line in there too, so we can see.
all the while, am I hearing from earlier, all the while, don't think about dipping into that fund balance.
No.
Okay,
Fund balance to me is
It's
locked
froze.
down this
off
year,
the table.
locked
Okay.
down. Would you agree?
Yeah, and that's where I was gonna go earlier, when I decided not to. I wanna figure out, I wanna learn a little more as to how we got to 4.4 million.
I can answer that in 2, 3 words. Laurel Hill and Alice Johnson. Because we were determined to take that from fund balance and not borrow the money. I'm gonna say that without qualifying it, but I would think about 3 million of that is probably those 2 projects.
Okay. Yeah, I just, I want-
And that was more than 2 words, but anyway. But there was a little intention on that, because I think we had a little too much in the fund balance. And so we spent it on something quality for the county.
And I feel like we're in a good place that we're not gonna have large projects like that come up again, at
We
least
can
that
build it
we
up.
foresee anytime soon. So we did it, and now here we are, so maybe we can build back.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, exactly, you never know what could,
So, all right.
not intentional projects.
All right, so
I
for
guess I'd
budgeting
say.
purposes, you have your direction there. We'll move on to the employee recognition and appreciation budget.
Tim, can I ask a question? If somebody give me a quick answer. On the personnel totals at the bottom, what's the 2.2 million and the 4.5 million?
That is, through January, we spent 2.2 million on personnel costs.
And then
And
by the end of the
estimated for
year-
the rest of the year, you're to staff 4.5 million a year.
1.5 million in salaries
Of your
a
budget,
year.
salary and benefits. Just for people to come to work. That's what we're spending.
And we ain't got into what health insurance is gonna be this year, but,
Does that not sound
Well,
right?
surely we
It
spend more than,
Sounds very low, matter of fact.
more than $4.5 million on salary.
We have, I don't know.
How many employees we got?
Now, is that just?
is that not
That's
counting
what I
like
was thinking,
DSS
so-
salaries and?
That's not right, because
No.
DSS spends that by themselves on
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
salaries.
So that's,
Yeah, we'll go back and
Mark
calculate
that
that.
Maybe there's a missing zero.
There's something not
There
right.
might be a missing zero in there, like a 20.
well, that would make it a whole lot worse. But
I know. Yeah, that's not
There's
right.
something not.
there's something not right with that, and because when I first looked
And
at it,
honestly,
I
the
thought-
the
I thought that's
second
what was
one,
the cost.
is I put a formula in there, so if the first one's wrong, the second one wasn't key, it's a formula, it's automatically gonna be right.
Well, because the way I was interpreting that is that was the additional cost of
That-
all of these
The additional
positions.
would be almost 630,000, 640,000. If we said fund every one of these
Right.
640 extra.
I don't know.
I'm not sure I believe that either.
I got you.
Yes,
Okay, employee recognition and appreciation budget team.
So, we see that we want to do more to recognize our staff, our loyal staff. You all started with the dinner for the last 2 years around the holidays. And our department heads have really started discussing more about that with, as far as doing more. We really, as a county, aren't doing anything except for the holiday dinner. Individual departments do various things, but department heads at a county have started thinking about this. We're starting a committee of, I believe, staff at all levels. Mr. Jason and Ms. Tyson are gonna be working on that, recruiting for that, but they need a budget, right? You can't just say a committee, do all this stuff and you don't give them anything to work within. So what is your comfort level in what the county was set aside to do this? I will say, it cost you $4,500 to have your dinner at Christmas.
Okay.
So that's just kind of a baseline. Some of the ideas that have been thrown around at department head, is like having something like a cookout for the employees come springtime. Like hot dogs, hamburgers kind of thing, doing something like that. And then I think there's other much smaller ideas that like anniversary dates and things like that that'll come up.
Have you got a number, Jason? In mind?
We talked about 15,000, something like that. If you did two, one dinner
If you did 2 dinners, that would leave you a little extra.
right, and if you did some incentives for like employees of the quarter, employees of the month, did some.
I don't have a problem with that number.
That's what we call it.
It sounds like a lot when we talk about, oh, we can't do this and we can't do that, but,
In the scheme of things, 15 grand is cheap, but
Compared to some of these other numbers, yeah.
compared to some of these other numbers. So for budgeting purposes, take a look at that number. We can always move it. We're not
We
voting,
can.
we're not voting on this today and saying that's what we're gonna do, so. We're just trying to put the numbers into the worksheet so we'll know what the budget's gonna be, right?
We'll try to look at it.
Item 12,
Can I back up for just a second to your personnel sheet?
Yeah.
April says she put a formula in. That should be 12 and it's
so
multiplied by
it's
2. So
missing a
your,
one.
yep, so your true figure should be 15,785,000.
is that estimated for the fiscal year? or
That is actually what we've spent up through January.
Okay,
15,786,398.
And that's your 7-month figure.
and then your estimated fiscal year would be, that?
Estimated. We probably,
32.
yeah, we're looking at overall, around 27.5.
But that counts in flow through money for DSS and all too.
That
from the
is-
state.
That,
What do you
no,
I'm sure it would. I mean, is that
that's,
That's
directly
everything.
our cost or is
that's
that?
true salaries, and then anything they get reimbursed is revenue.
Okay, so some of that wouldn't,
You get reimbursed.
some of that's offset.
Some of
Okay.
that, exactly.
So it's not a total of, okay. All right. Anyway, moving on. Budgetary goals. I want to say one thing. Lock the fund and don't raise the tax rate.
No argument from me.
I'm good with that.
That will be the budgetary goal, I think, in simple terms.
And then everything else fall in between those
And
two.
everything else falls in there in between. So with that said, moving on to the commissioner comment, I would need to talk about the school request from last night. And we had our liaison committee meeting. And, they actually requested 10.5 million and 300 capital. Last year, we gave 10 million and 300 capital. So I did some really quick calculations earlier, based on their ADM. So when we did the budget last year, 10 million, I'm just talking operating costs here. Their estimated ADM at the time was 5,500 students, which put us at funding them at $1,818 per student, county, local money. Their actual ADN ended up at 150 less, 5350, and those numbers are rounded up or down. It could be 53, 54, but anyway, that put us actually funding them at $1,869 per pupil. Their request this year of 10.5 and their estimated ADM of 5250, which if they miss it by 100 like they did this year, this number will go up. But that's actually $2,000 per student actual cost. If we cut that to 10.2, that would be $1,942 a student, which is still an increase. And if we stayed at the 10 million, it'd be $1,904 per student, which is still an increase because of this per student amount. Formula, school floor, whatever you want to call it. The DPI has quit publishing the numbers that they used to produce. It was an Excel sheet basically per county. It showed how much federal, state, low wealth, all the items we needed to fill that formula sheet out. Because there's a formula sheet out there. You plug in the numbers and it'll tell you what the school floor is. We haven't been using that for how many years now? But I always like to have that number walking in there to sit down and look at it. We can't get it this year. And I've asked the state superintendent for it, and she can't figure it out because they don't have those numbers. So we don't have a floor number to use. Statute says the state's supposed to calculate it DPI. They say they gave it to the schools years ago. Schools haven't got a clue. And up until this year, we've been able to do our calculation on it. And we've been quite a bit heavier than the school floor costs were, which last year I think was around $9.2 million. And we funded it at $10 million. So, we've got to have that conversation at some time. Do you need a number now to start working on, or have you already used a number, or? I'm talking budgeting wise, you know.
No.
I mean, of course,
We were
we've got,
hoping it would stay at 10 or go below.
right, well,
Um,
we've got to get everybody together for sure. But I think for budgeting purposes, the same as the other, we need to have a number just to be able to put all the numbers down. That means we're gonna go with that. I would figure it two ways. I would figure it 10.5, I would figure it at 10.2, and I'd figure it at 10. Because somebody's gonna ask that question, how much, you know, unless you think there's another number in there. And I know you do, but, if you want to speak to that.
I mean, I think calculating it at 10 and at 10.2 and 10.5.
Well, again, I'm gonna go back to, and I don't know that 10 is the magical number, but even if we give them 10 this year, that's an increase.
It's an increase per
Because their
student.
students
Increase
keep
per
dropping
student.
every
That's
year.
if their ADM comes out, their average daily membership. It may not be that number because they've been losing more than that every year. And, you know, when I was started on this board, they were over 6,000. And we're closing in on going under 5,000. But we're still funding it at the same rates we were funding it 6 years ago, in that range.
I feel like too, and I know you've already done some work on this. Thank you on behalf of the county. I think we need to push a little harder at DPI to help us with this floor. I think you have an excellent point. If the law was this, let's figure that out. And if they finally want to look at us and say, we're not going to give it to you, we're not going to give you the numbers, fine.
Oh,
There's still
Catherine, she's
legislation-
gonna tell that to me.
There's still legislation that says you are
Yeah.
DPI. No, I know,
I'm
that's a lot to
not-
say.
It's
Doesn't mean they're
been,
gonna do it.
it's been a month and a half.
Mhm.
And since I started that conversation, have had no more replies about it. I even sent them the worksheet that we use so that all they had to do was get the numbers. And, I'm gonna have a conversation with her at some point about it's time to, you know what, to get off the pot. So,
I do it because when you don't even know the baseline, according to what the law says is the baseline, we're kind of at the losing end of that.
right. And again, the danger of us all of a sudden going with what the floor says is, you know, if we go below that 3% number in 1 year, that cuts out their low wealth funding, which is another $3 or $4 million that they would lose. So I don't want to put that in danger, that's for sure. But, we need to keep that number in mind. But today's goal is to have it to where they could have numbers to plug in to bring back final numbers for us. Now, whether they're gonna go for whatever we say or not, I don't know. But,
What did you say last year's was?
10 million operational and 300 capital.
And that's what it was the year before that.
But
And that
they
was for a
always
couple
wanted,
years.
or Beth said for the last 2 years, they wanted to take, 200 of that
They've
capital?
taken the whole 300 and they've applied it to their lease payments.
Well, for some reason on their financials last night, and he had the financial sheet. It wasn't just a typed up sheet. He had $100,000 on there that
They
they.
maintain.
So I'm not sure what they're calculating or how, because he was convinced that we only gave him 100 in capital. I said, no, I know, Rick, we gave you 300.
How is that distributed?
That was what?
How is it distributed?
The capital dollars?
Mhm.
So usually what we've done in the past, if it has, we'll pay it out toward the end of the fiscal year.
Okay.
So we'll ask for invoices of whatever their capital projects were. They'll send that to us and then we look at them, send out the $300,000. So it's usually in a chunk.
Okay, you got anything else? Yep.
Yes, sir.
There. Anybody else? Speak now, forever hold your peace. If not, we will adjourn this meeting.
Thank all of you for being here.
Thank you all for being here.
You're welcome.
Please
You
don't
got-
hit us in the
you
back
got
of the head
lunch,
as you
right?
walk
Well,
out.
hey, y'all need to hang around.
You're
I got
welcome
lunch coming.
he's bringing
Oh, you
lunch.
got
in,
lunch
so
coming?
you are well, yeah,
I
I'll
thought we
slow
were
y'all
gonna be here at
down.
1 o'clock.
Y'all will move.
No, we didn't get here at 1 o'clock. What time's lunch coming?
Yeah, Lee. You want, hey, you want to grab some, chips or anything?
What time's lunch coming?
See y'all.
She's
That'll
gone.
be good.
Well, we can keep eating then.
Well, then, in that case.
Well, you can't, technically you
Calculate
can't now because you're.
nine
and
a half.
Then we're officially adjourned. Turn the camera off.
I want them to think at least somebody is thinking about 9.5 million.
I'm thinking about it.
Uh-oh, here he comes.